Hi everyone, this is Alan Archuleta of Archuleta University and Archuleta Advisors. Today we're going to go over the COVID-19 or coronavirus payroll tax credits, how they work, and how you as an employer could take advantage of them. So one thing I want to cover and make certain here is that everyone understands that though this presentation contains information relating to specific laws, this does not constitute as legal advice. We are not a law firm and I am not an attorney, so most of this information was gathered directly from the IRS website. So if you do need legal advice, we would encourage you to please contact a licensed attorney within your state. So on March 18th, 2020, President Trump signed into law the Family First Coronavirus Response Act. So on March 20th of this month, the US Treasury, the IRS, and the Department of Labor generated and announced a plan to help small business as well as medium-sized business owners get through and recover from the coronavirus related business challenges. I'm sure as you've seen, there's several things that are taking place across the nation as well as within your own business, trying to scatter and trying to make sense of everything and trying to figure out how we keep our employees paid, how we keep our business open and get through this crisis. So like I said, this response was done through the implementation of the Family First Coronavirus Response Act, which was signed into law on March 18th, 2020. So in this presentation, we're going to cover a couple things. First, we're going to go over paid sick leave and how it relates to this act, the paid family and medical leave, how that relates, how the payroll tax credits work, and how you can get immediate credits and reimbursements, and who is exempt, what the non-enforcement period is, and some additional relief if you're looking to provide additional benefits to your employees, through the Robert T. Stafford Disaster Relief and Emergency Assistance Act, which actually went into effect after 9/11. All right, so let's talk about the paid sick leave element of this act. So within this act that was signed into law this month, it shows that any employees that are showing signs of COVID-19 or otherwise known as coronavirus related issues, if they're being told that they need to self-quarantine or they need to seek any medical treatment as necessary, that employee is eligible to receive up to 80 hours paid sick leave, even if you don't have a paid sick leave policy in place. I know here in California, we have one mandated by law. This is a little bit different and separate from that because there's elements of credits and payroll credits at the federal level, which we'll get into in a little bit. But essentially, workers are entitled to up to 80 hours of sick paid leave under the Act, which is equivalent to 10 working days. They'll receive their sick time at 100% of their normal pay. And as I mentioned, this is utilized for employees who need to either self-quarantine, seek medical attention, or they're showing signs of COVID-19. So let's talk about the paid family and medical leave aspect of this act, right? So if employees, so this one's a little bit different. So if employees are caring for someone, whether it be a parent, an adult, their child, one of their children, who has any COVID-19 related issues, the employee's children's schools closed or the child care providers are unavailable, the worker also is entitled to paid sick leave as well as additional leave on top of that. So as it relates to this portion, the workers are entitled to 80 hours of paid sick leave under the Act, just like with the paid sick time, or up to 10 days. However, there is an additional, if needed, up to 10 weeks of expanded paid family and medical leave. So it's the 80 hours plus an additional 10 weeks expanded paid family and medical leave if they need it, which in the FMLA, they have those very similar protections in place in regards to saving their job and protection of their job. The employees rather receive sick time at 2/3 their normal pay. So this is different a little bit compared to the paid sick time for the employee who sees symptoms. Um, and I would suggest that the employees check to see if benefits for extended leave are available at their state level. Sometimes, like in California, there's a paid Family and Medical Leave Act in place that they can get this covered at the state level instead of the employer having to brunt the cost of the 10 weeks of expanded paid family leave and medical leave. All right, so let's talk about the payroll tax credits. I'm sure a lot of you are getting a little concerned because you're seeing all this mandated stuff that has to be paid and offered to employees, which might not be the norm for your business in regards to sick leave. So this is kind of how it works to help employers offset. So employers, they will receive 100% reimbursement for the paid leave pursuant to the act. Also included in the reimbursements are any healthcare related costs. Employers will face no payroll tax liability on the paid leave. So for the leave that you give for the sick time, there will be no employer-based taxes for that. And self-employed individuals can also receive an equivalent credit. So how does this work? So the employees who are sick relating to the COVID-19 symptoms, as we previously mentioned, they get 100% of their pay, which is up to $500. It's capped at $511 a day, or $5,110 for the total of the 10-day period, right? So for the ones that are under the paid family medical leave that are caring for others or children who are out of school, they receive, as mentioned, 2/3 of their pay, and that's up to $200 a day or $2,000 for the total of 10 days. Now, as mentioned, they can get an additional 10 weeks. That's also capped at $200 a day for a total of $10,000 over the 10-week period, which, the math comes out to the same for those 10 days. So eligible employers may also receive an additional tax credit to help maintain the health coverage for the employee during this period. So let's talk a little bit more about how this credit goes into place. All right, so let's expand on a little bit how this COVID-19 payroll tax credits are working these days. So we know that cash flow is extremely tight right now for you, right? We don't have, with limited revenues and things starting to contract, we don't have extra money to just pay added benefits for our employees, such as sick time, though we want to make sure we take care of them. We got to make sure that we preserve and protect the business. So how does this credit work and how fast does the reimbursement come? Well, costs for this paid sick leave under this act are essentially immediately credited back to the employer through the portion of the Social Security and Medicare taxes for the employer. As I'm sure you're aware, the employer pays the Social Security and Medicare tax portion each time a payroll is ran. And that is equivalent to 7.65% of the gross payroll each period. So this pot essentially is where the hours and the pay for the sick leave under this act are coming out of. So let's give an example, right? So say you have $1,000 in taxes owed on the employer side. You have an employee that's on sick leave under this act, and the cost for their total wages is $200, right? So they would subtract the $200 from the $1,000, leaving the remaining tax of $800 that you pay, and that's how your immediate credit is going into place. So let's say if it's flipped, right? So say that you owe $200 in taxes for employer portion, and the wages for the individual on sick leave equivalent to $1,000, how does that work? Well, what ends up happening is the difference between, they basically take the 200 out and there's $800 left over. The IRS will provide you a cash refund for that amount. Refunds supposedly are coming within 14 days of filing and paying those wages, and hopefully it will be sooner, so employers don't have to wait. So that's kind of the gist of how the credit is working. All right, so the next thing that we're going to take a look at is who is exempt from the act, right? So there are some employers who are exempt, and that's usually based on size, so it doesn't take a negative impact onto their business. So right now, as it's written, businesses with fewer than 50 employees are eligible for an exemption from the leave requirements relating only to the school closings or childcare unavailability, where the requirements would create harm in the business to continue operations. Okay, so remember there was two portions: the paid sick leave and then the one pertaining to child care and school closings, right? So that's all this exemption is pertaining to. It's not pertaining to being exempt from the paid sick leave, right? So I just wanted to make sure that's well understood and clear. This exemption will be available based on a simple and clear criteria that make it available and will cause the business operation harm, right? So they want to make sure that, nothing that's going into place in their mind will cause your business harm. So again, this is not exemption from the paid sick leave for the employee. It's only for the school closures or childcare unavailability related issues. All right, so let's talk about enforcement of this act and what the non-enforcement period is. So the non-enforcement period essentially is just the period in which the employer has, it's kind of like a grace period to put the act and the policies into place and become compliant with the act, right? So under this policy, essentially the Labor Department will not bring any enforcement against an employer who violates the act if the employer has acted in good faith to comply with the act, and instead they're going to spend their efforts over the next 30-day period focusing on assisting employers with compliance, right? So what good faith means is that if you're doing everything that you possibly can to get this act in place and done the right way, then you're acting in good faith. But if you're just doing things to avoid having to pay paid sick leave and comply with this act, and that's not acting in good faith. So the non-enforcement period essentially gives you 30 days to just get all this stuff in place and start making it a policy and allowing your employees to start taking advantage. All right, those employers that are looking for providing additional assistance to their employees and are looking for some tax benefits and relief for doing that during this period, there is a little known act that went into place back in 2002 after the 9/11 attacks that relates to disaster assistance and relief. It's called the Robert T. Stafford Disaster Relief and Emergency Assistance Act, right? So under Section 139 of this act, the employers who make qualified disaster relief payments to employees to assist them in managing things such as COVID-19. When the president declares a federally declared disaster event, which he has done, payments made to these employees are tax-free to the employees and fully deductible to the employer, right? So what that means is that if, in a lot of situations, employers can't give gifts to employees, they either, it gets classified as a fringe benefit, or, the IRS always wants their taxes, right? So in this case, because that it's helping with a qualified disaster relief payment, they are allowing the employees to get those tax-free, not being taxed as a fringe benefit, and it's all also being fully deductible by the employer. So these types of expenses related to the COVID-19 pandemic, or medical expenses that the employee are not compensated for by insurance, over-the-counter medications and hand sanitizer, if there's any funeral costs of an employee or a member of the employee's family, costs associated with enabling an employee to work from home throughout the pandemic, if the cost, such as a computer, cell phone, printer supplies, anything that they need to do their job from home if being, quarantined or having a stay-at-home order, and also the cost of employees' child care or tutoring for family members that are not permitted to attend school throughout the pandemic, right? So it's up to you, if you want to provide additional assistance and benefits to employees or longtime employees, if you have the ability or means to do so. There is additional benefits for yourself as well as the employee not being taxed on those dollars. So you could look into utilizing this section under this act of the Robert Stafford Disaster Relief and Emergency Assistance Act. All right, so what do I do next? Where do we go from here, right? So the most important thing is to, get the full comprehension of what the act is, how it relates to your business as an employer, and how everything is going to play out, right? So the first thing you want to do is become compliant by putting the policy into place. It's probably a good idea to have a summary sheet or some basic information to provide to employees if they ask. Communicate with them on their benefits, what they should expect, and how the program is different from the regular paid sick leave policy if applicable. And also contact your payroll provider to confirm that they're set up to handle the credit processing and reimbursement. If you do not have help with that, our team at Archuleta Advisors is here to help you. We have a full payroll platform that we run hundreds of payrolls every single month, and then we're happy to help you and give you any guidance. I will put some stuff in the comment section of the video course to provide you resources and to get in contact with us if you have any more questions about this video and about how the processing of the credits work. I want to thank you for your time today, and hopefully this information was valuable for you and that you better understand how these tax credits are going to help you offset the cost of providing paid sick leave for your employees. So if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to us. I'll leave contact information in the video section so you can get in contact with us at our parent company, Archuleta Advisors, where we'll be able to help and advise and assist you in any way that we can. We hope you have a great day and the best of luck.